Comparison doesn't tell you how good they are. It tells you how scared you are. And here's what that matters. If comparison was actually about them, it would feel neutral, informational, like checking a scoreboard. But it doesn't feel like that, it feels like a threat. And that gap between what comparison should feel like and what it actually feels like, that gap is the whole story. What your brain is actually scanning for when it compares you to someone else, and why you can't just decide to stop doing it. That's what we are covering. But first, we need to understand what comparison is actually for, because it's not what you think. Psychologist Leon Festinger at MIT developed social comparison theory back in the 1950s. His original finding wasn't about insecurity, it was about survival. Humans are social animals. For most of human history, being excluded from that group meant that. So your brain evolved one job: constantly scan where you stand relative to the people around you, not out of fear, out of a threat detection. If you rank too low, you both cut, so your brain learned to fire an alarm. Every time someone new to pull ahead, not so you'd feel bad, so you'd act. That alarm is still firing in a world where being outperformed doesn't actually threaten survival, but your brain hasn't gotten that update. Here's what that outdated alarm is actually costing you. You see someone succeed at something you want, and instead of feeling inspired, you feel smaller. Not because you're petty, because your brain just fired a survival alert. And that alert doesn't feel like information, it feels like evidence. It feels like evidence. Evidence that you're behind, that you're not enough, that the gap between who you and them means something about your worth. The more alerts fire, the more evidence stacks up, and the quicker your own ambition gets. And here's what makes this so hard to just stop doing. The comparison reflex isn't a habit that you develop. It's a scanning system your brain runs automatically. You don't decide to compare, your brain does it before you even aware it happened. Which means willpower alone will never be enough to turn it off. But understanding what it's actually scanning for, that changes everything. Be honest, what do you compare yourself to most? And how does it make you feel after? Drop it below. It's why the more you compare, the worse it gets over time. Every time you see someone ahead of you, your brain doesn't just fire the alarm, it fires the data. Gap confirmed, threat level updated. And now the baseline shifts. What used to feel like enough starts to feel like failing behind. And the people you are comparing yourself to keep changing, because your brain always finds something further ahead. That's the whole point of the scan. Not to make you feel good, to keep you alert. Here's the thing about comparison that completely changes how you see it. The person you are comparing yourself to isn't actually the point. Your brain isn't measuring them, it's measuring the gap. And the gap isn't about their success. It's about what their success make you afraid you might find out about yourself. That you're not talented enough, that you started too late, that you don't have what it takes. They are not the threat. The truth you are afraid to face, that's the threat. Here's the complete answer to why it's not insecurity and why that distinction matters. Researcher Joanna Wood at the University of Waterloo spent years studying who comparison hurts most. Comparison hurts people who are already uncertain about themselves in that area. Not people who are confident, not people who are arrogant, people who genuinely don't know yet. Which means when comparison stings, it's not a character flaw firing, it's uncertainty firing. Your brain is running a scan on an area where you haven't figured out about who you actually are yet, and seeing someone else further along feels like an answer coming back negative. But here's the thing, that's not information about your ceiling. That's information about where you are right now. Those are the same thing. Think about what comparison has actually caused you, not the feeling, the decisions. The thing you didn't start because someone else was already further along. The idea didn't share because someone else already had a version of it. The version of yourself didn't show up as because showing up felt pointless when they were already so far ahead. That's the real cause, not the feeling of comparison, the things you don't do because of it. Three things that actually change this. 1. When comparison fires, ask what you are actually afraid to find out about yourself, not what they have that you don't. What truth about it feels like it might be confirmed by the gap. Name it, that's the real conversation to have. 2. Compare yourself to where you were, not where they were. Your brain will resist this. It will say that's not useful data. It is. It's the only data that actually about you. 3. Use the sting as a signal, not a verdict. When comparison hurts, it's pointing at something you care about deeply, but haven't committed to yet. Follow that, not the sting. You weren't comparing yourself to them because you are insecure. You were comparing yourself to them because your brain found someone who seemed to have the answer to a question you are still afraid to ask yourself. They were never the point. Comparison was never about them. It was always about how scared you are of finding out what you actually are. Find out. That's the only thing that makes you stop. If you want more videos that go this deep into what's actually driving the patterns, subscribe. That's all this channel does.